All right, let's get back. We've spoken about quite a few interesting topics, and this, as you know, is the Money Show on ET Now. Let's talk about Fitness Friday. And you're probably wondering why we're talking about Fitness Friday on the Money Show. But it so happens that you can't really enjoy the fruits of your labor, the money that you work so hard to earn, if you're not fit, both mentally and physically. Now, since we started working at home, and believe it or not, I still am working from home, I think I have realized that I tend to work longer hours, and I think that is the case with a lot of people out there. People have been saying that they work odd hours. They don't necessarily follow the routine that they used to when they were going physically to office. They're getting calls at all hours of the day. Their meetings stretch to sometimes midnight. There are all sorts of stories going around, and that really is maybe the definition of a workaholic, and that's really what we're going to be talking about today: the need to draw a line somewhere and to stop being a workaholic. My guest is Dr. Siddhant Bhargava, who is a fitness and nutritional scientist. I'm going to say that again. My guest today is Dr. Siddhant Bhargava, who is a fitness and nutritional scientist. Thank you so much, Siddhant, for taking the time. We're speaking about workaholism. How bad do you think this situation is, especially in the current context? And what are the kind of interactions that you've had with some of your patients? Perhaps you can give us some insight so that we can recognize the signs.
I think it's gotten pretty bad, especially once the entire lockdown culture, as we call it, came into being. As you rightly mentioned, boundaries have sort of become really blurry. I run a startup myself, and from an employer and an employee point of view, I think it has slightly gotten toxic. Like for us employers, we sort of have started working later on at night, and somewhere we started creating an expectation within an employees as well that they're supposed to be responsive even at a later time. So yes, boundaries have been blurred, and we have started taking conscious steps to fix it by not being active on various communication portals and so on and so forth. So some fixing is definitely required.
Okay, but I want to understand the implications of this. And workaholism, based on my understanding of the term, would be stretching your work day beyond a certain number of hours, not getting enough sleep. What are the implications of this? And I think you would also necessarily not be eating on time, maybe not eating the kind of food that you should normally eat, because your focus is entirely driven towards output, right? So what are the signs, and is there a deterioration that takes place over a period of time that is very dangerous, doctor?
Definitely. I mean, when you speak about workaholism, you're thinking about work constantly. You're feeling restless until you're doing something productive about work, and you're sort of feeling like a desire, major psychological desire through your work. So it definitely starts taking a toll on your mental, physical, and emotional health. I think you start ignoring certain parts of your social well-being. You're not eating on time. You're not moving around. You're just sitting there and trying to be as productive as possible, only towards one dimension of your life, which is work. And in the past 1.5 years, we've seen a lot of people whose mental and physical health has been deteriorating. Obesity, in fact, if I have to quote you numbers, because of not being able to sort of move around and you're just stuck to work, the case of obesity in India have risen from 21.6 to 24.6%. And that's an extremely large number when you look at a population like India. So there are people who are consciously now trying to move a little. Your smart watches have come into play. People have set alarms and reminders to sort of get off work, take a stroll, maybe go to the gym, start eating a little healthier, and just overall being a little more invested in their health, because it's only going to affect your productivity. I mean, it's always said, right? All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and that's a saying that's always going to remain true.
Absolutely. In fact, doctor, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the solution. You've mentioned in a certain sense what people can do, what people have started doing already, but you have listed out a little bit more, and I want to talk to you in a lot more detail about that. But before we do, we have to slip into a short commercial break. On the other side of the break, viewers, we'll talk about what you can do if you are in a situation where you find that you're working a little too much. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show and this is Fitness Friday. Now, we were talking about workaholism, but my guest, Dr. Siddhant, has also coined a term. It's called wellaholic, which is, I would assume, the opposite of workaholic. How do you get to being a wellaholic, Dr. Siddhant?
I think there are multiple ways. Let's start off with the simpler ones. Number one is start setting boundaries with respect to your time. I understand that you want to sort of grow with respect to your work, but I think setting boundaries, even for your mental health, is extremely important. Physiologically, if I have to give you what's actually happening within your body, the moment you start stressing or you're actually doing one task monotonously, levels of cortisol in your bloodstream are going to start rising. Cortisol essentially is the stress hormone. And once cortisol starts rising, it's going to start taking a toll on your mental health, even physiologically. So it's going to start creating neurotransmitters that start making you feel sadder and more stressed. Apart from that, it's also going to put you at a risk of, say, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and things like that. So this is something which is really serious and has to be stopped. Talking further, one thing that you can start keeping track of is the amount of hours you sleep. Now, there are multiple studies that indicate a person sleeping for less than 7 hours is likely to die sooner. Now, I would love to quote you on that, quote myself on the study with respect to the references. I'm afraid you can't show that up on the screen, but this is something which is really underrated. People start taking sleep for granted, thinking that it's a waste of time. But I think this is one thing that you need to start paying attention to. Another thing is that you need to start having a playtime outside of work. What I mean by that is this playtime could be anything. It could be socializing, speaking to your friends, actually playing a sport. But it's important. I think your mind needs some kind of a refreshment. This is another thing that one must pay attention to. Apart from this, I cannot stress enough the importance of good nutrition and good exercise. Every single day, sparing 45 minutes of your day is not difficult at all. If you don't have a gym, there's no point complaining about it. Just get up, get onto YouTube, and you can just get on to some workout that's available on YouTube. But moving your limbs for at least 45 minutes a day is supremely important. And lastly, and in my opinion, the most important is getting adequate nutrition. A lot of workaholics end up consuming a lot of caffeine and they're sort of suppressing their own appetite, not getting enough nutrition in. With effect, you're not eating enough fat, enough protein, enough carbohydrates. Maybe your energy levels will start plummeting. And even your micronutrients, which can actually have a great role in the way you're productive at work, will also start depleting. So I think these are a couple of steps that I would suggest to people who come my way when they tell me that they've not been able to concentrate on themselves and their health is taking a toll.
Absolutely. You've summed it up in a brilliant manner. These are the steps that one can follow. It's been a pleasure, Dr. Siddhant. Thank you so much for taking the time and wish you a very happy Diwali. Look forward to speaking to you soon.
Same to you. Thank you so much for having me here. Bye-bye.
All right, that brings us to the end of this edition. That brings us to the end of this edition of The Money Show. It's been a pleasure bringing it to you. Do stay tuned. Lots more coming up in just a short while. And this is ET Now.